The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. The clock struck 9 in the quiet village of King's Abbot, and Dr. Shepherd left Roger Ackroyd alive in his study, a sealed letter burning in the man's hand, a letter that named a blackmailer and a killer. By 10 o'clock, that study was a locked tomb. Ackroyd slumped in his chair, a dagger gleaming in his neck. The letter vanished. Suspicions fly toward his missing stepson, but the brilliant Hercule Poirot sees a darker pattern. Every guest at the mansion is lying. Every alibi is a carefully woven fiction, and the trustworthy narrator of this tale is hiding the deadliest secret of all. The truth is a blade in the dark, and it's pointing closer to home than anyone dares imagine. In the quiet English village of King's Abbot, Dr. James Shepherd is summoned early one September morning to the home of Mrs. Ferrars, only to find she has died in her sleep from an overdose of veronal. The doctor returns home to his inquisitive sister Caroline, who immediately spreads the news through her network of servants and tradespeople. Caroline has long believed Mrs. Ferrars poisoned her husband Ashley a year earlier, though Dr. Shepherd dismisses this as gossip. The village is already buzzing with speculation about the widow's death and her relationship with the wealthy Roger Ackroyd. Roger Ackroyd is the most prominent man in King's Abbot, a successful manufacturer who plays the role of country squire. He was widowed years ago when his wife drank herself to death, leaving him with a stepson, Ralph Peyton, whom he raised as his own. Recently, Ackroyd had grown close to Mrs. Ferrars, and villagers expected them to marry after her mourning period ended. Ackroyd's household includes his housekeeper, Miss Russell, his secretary, Geoffrey Raymond, and his visiting sister-in-law, Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd, with her daughter Flora. Dr. Shepherd encounters his new neighbor, a peculiar foreigner named Mr. Porret, who grows vegetable marrows. During their conversation, Porret reveals he is actually Hercule Poirot, the famous Belgian detective now retired. Poirot shows keen interest in village affairs, particularly in Ralph Peyton, whom he describes as unusually handsome, but with something mysterious about him. Meanwhile, Caroline discovers Ralph is secretly staying at the local inn rather than with his stepfather, and she spies him meeting a young woman in the woods. Dr. Shepherd visits Ralph at the Three Boars Inn, finding the young man in a troubled state. Ralph confesses he's in serious financial trouble and fears his stepfather's disapproval, but refuses to elaborate or accept help. That evening, Shepherd attends dinner at Fernley Park, Ackroyd's estate. Among the guests are Flora Ackroyd, Major Blunt, Geoffrey Raymond, and Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd. The atmosphere is tense, and Ackroyd appears particularly preoccupied throughout the meal. After dinner, Ackroyd takes Dr. Shepherd into his study, claiming he needs digestive tablets. Once alone, Ackroyd reveals he's in a terrible state. He confesses that Mrs. Ferrars admitted to him she poisoned her husband. Worse, she had been blackmailed for the past year by someone who discovered her crime. She refused to name the blackmailer, but promised to leave Ackroyd a letter identifying the person before taking her own life. Ackroyd is torn between wanting justice and fearing scandal. As they speak, Parker the butler brings in the Evening Post. Among the letters is one in Mrs. Ferrars' handwriting, postmarked the previous evening. Ackroyd becomes agitated, sensing they're being watched. He opens the envelope, but insists on reading the letter alone after Shepherd leaves. Despite Shepherd's urging to read it immediately, Ackroyd stubbornly refuses. Shepherd departs at approximately 10 minutes to 9, leaving Ackroyd alone with the unread letter. Walking home, Dr. Shepherd encounters a rough-voiced stranger asking directions to Fernley Park. The man seems unfamiliar with the area. Shortly after 10 o'clock, Shepherd receives a telephone call, supposedly from Parker, reporting that Roger Ackroyd has been murdered. Shepherd rushes back to Fernley, but Parker denies making the call. They find a study door locked from inside. After breaking it down, they discover Ackroyd dead in his armchair, stabbed in the neck with a distinctive Tunisian dagger. Inspector Raglan arrives to investigate. The study window is open, and footprints with rubber studs are found outside, matching shoes owned by Ralph Peyton. The blue envelope for Mrs. Ferrars is missing. Suspicion immediately falls on Ralph, especially when it's learned he hasn't been seen since the previous evening. Flora Ackroyd reveals she saw her uncle alive at 9:45 when she said goodnight, narrowing the time of death. Ralph's disappearance seems to confirm his guilt. Flora Ackroyd, convinced of Ralph's innocence despite their recent secret engagement, approaches Hercule Poirot to investigate. Poirot emerges from retirement, explaining he wants to live quietly but cannot resist an interesting case. He examines the study with meticulous care, noting several puzzling details: a chair that has been moved, the state of the fire, and the position of the murder weapon. Poirot questions every member of the household, detecting that each is hiding something. The investigation reveals complex motives. Ralph stands to inherit a vast fortune. The missing £40 from Ackroyd's room suggests possible theft. Mrs. Ferrars's blackmailer remains unknown. Poirot learns that the mysterious telephone call about the murder came from a public booth at King's Abbot Station just before the night mail to Liverpool departed. He also discovers a scrap of starched cambric and a goose quill used for snorting heroin near the summer house on the grounds. Poirot gathers the household and declares that everyone present is concealing information. He appeals for truth, but only Geoffrey Raymond confesses to being in debt and relieved by a legacy from Ackroyd. Flora defiantly announces her engagement to Ralph, standing by him despite the evidence. Mrs. Ackroyd hints that Ralph might be unstable due to wartime experiences. The meeting ends with Poirot's declaration that he will uncover the truth despite them all. Dr. Shepherd becomes Poirot's unofficial assistant, though he remains skeptical of the detective's methods. Poirot focuses on 3 key questions: the identity of Mrs. Ferrars's blackmailer, the meaning of the staged telephone call, and why Ralph Peyton disappeared. He also investigates the parlor-maid Ursula Bourne, who gave notice after Ackroyd dismissed her for disturbing papers on his desk. Poirot sends Shepherd to check her references, finding her previous employer evasive and nervous. Mrs. Ackroyd confesses to Dr. Shepherd that on the afternoon of the murder, she searched Ackroyd's desk for his will, wanting to know her financial prospects. Ursula Bourne caught her in the act. This explains the maid's dismissal. Ackroyd was angry about the intrusion, not about rearranged papers. Mrs. Ackroyd also admits to opening the silver table earlier that evening, considering taking a piece to London for valuation, when she heard someone coming and fled. Poirot conducts an experiment, reenacting Flora's conversation with Parker outside the study door to test whether voices could be heard on the terrace. He pays particular attention to whether Parker carried 1 glass or 2 on his tray that night, a seemingly trivial point that holds significance for Poirot. Meanwhile, village gossip runs rampant at a mahjong party, with theories about Ralph's whereabouts, stolen money, and possible accomplices. New clues emerge. Poirot finds a wedding ring in the goldfish pond inscribed from March 13th. He learns Ralph's boots were black, not brown as he had supposed. Miss Russell, the housekeeper, had visited Dr. Shepherd on the morning of the murder, asking suspicious questions about untraceable poisons and drug habits. Each piece of information seems to complicate rather than clarify the picture. Poirot reveals a startling theory about the fingerprints on the dagger. He suggests the murderer placed Ackroyd's own hand around the weapon after killing him, making the prints worthless as evidence. This implies the killer was knowledgeable and deliberate. Meanwhile, the search for Ralph intensifies, with police watching all ports and stations. Flora remains steadfast in her belief of his innocence, maintaining their engagement publicly. The relationship between Flora and Major Blunt deepens, with Blunt pledging to stand by her. Blunt admits to Poirot that on the night of the murder, he thought he saw a woman in white disappearing into the bushes near the terrace. He also heard Ackroyd speaking to someone he assumed was Raymond at approximately 9:30. This timeline becomes increasingly crucial as alibis are checked and rechecked. Poirot confronts Ursula Bourne with his suspicions. Under pressure, she breaks down and reveals a stunning secret. She is actually Mrs. Ralph Peyton. She and Ralph married secretly months earlier, fearing Ackroyd's disapproval since Ralph was financially dependent on him. On the night of the murder, she met Ralph in the summer house, where they argued about money. Ralph told her they needed to be careful because Ackroyd might disinherit him. Ursula explains that after her meeting with Ralph, she returned to the house and encountered Parker acting suspiciously near the study. She confirms seeing the silver table open earlier that evening. Her revelation changes everything. Ralph had a compelling reason to keep his marriage secret, and Ursula's position in the household gives her unique access and knowledge. But does it make either of them a murderer? Poirot gathers all the principal players for a final confrontation. He systematically reviews the evidence, the timing of events, the moved chair, the open window, the missing letter, the telephone call, and the 40 pounds. He notes how each person's secret, Mrs. Ackroyd's snooping, Raymond's debts, Blunt's affection for Flora, Ursula's marriage, clouded the investigation but weren't directly related to the murder. The detective then delivers his shocking conclusion. Dr. James Shepherd is the murderer. Shepherd killed Ackroyd for the money he lost in speculative investments, having come into a legacy that he squandered. As the village doctor, he had access to drugs and medical knowledge. He arrived home after leaving Ackroyd at 10 to 9, then returned to Fernley through the empty house, entering the study through the previously unnoticed door from Ackroyd's bedroom. Poirot explains how Shepherd found Ackroyd reading Mrs. Ferrars's letter, which named Shepherd himself as the blackmailer. After poisoning Ashley Ferrars, Shepherd had blackmailed Mrs. Ferrars for a year, driving her to suicide. When Ackroyd read the letter naming him, Shepherd stabbed him with the dagger from the silver table, arranged the scene, and left through the window, planting Ralph's shoes to make the footprints. Shepherd made the telephone call to himself to establish an alibi and timing, pretending to be Parker. He manipulated the investigation from within, acting as Poirot's helpful assistant while steering suspicion toward Ralph. He wrote the anonymous notes and planted clues, counting on village gossip and everyone's secrets to create confusion. His medical knowledge allowed him to give misleading evidence about the time of death. Faced with irrefutable logic and evidence, Dr. Shepherd breaks down. In a final act of confession, he agrees to write a full account of the crime, which becomes the narrative we have just read, the murder of Roger Ackroyd itself. He plans to take Veronal, just as Mrs. Ferrars did, ending his life before facing arrest and trial. His sister Caroline, whose gossip initially seemed harmless, ultimately helped Poirot piece together the truth. The case concludes with justice served, though not through conventional means. Ralph Peyton is cleared and reunites with Ursula. Flora inherits £20,000 and finds happiness with Major Blunt. Hercule Poirot returns to retirement, having solved one of his most cleverly constructed cases. The peaceful village of King's Abbot is shaken to its core, learning that evil can hide behind the most trusted and respectable facades. The murder of Roger Ackroyd remains a chilling reminder that sometimes the truth lies closest to home. Subscribe to Classic Book Summaries so you don't miss the next book summary.